I'm on this BobCast with my friend Greg Sheperd, and I don't use that term loosely, friend. Geez, Greg, I don't remember meeting you. I mean, we've known each other a long time.
I'd
Through
say what, Bob, 25 years or more? I don't know. It's been a long time.
probably 25 years or so. It has been a long time, but it's been, we've never gotten a fight. And you and I we're not shy about talking politics either. I mean, but our voices have never been raised and, prefer to listen, you know. We're not on the same side. Greg, I seem to remember too that you served in the military.
I was a commissioned officer in the military, Army Reserve. Yeah.
And what did you do?
So I was military police. So when I went in, I actually was like one of, I don't know, maybe five people in the country that got the opportunity to participate in what they call a simultaneous membership program. And that is where you actually are in a reserve unit and in college at the same time. Most of the time when you do ROTC in college, you don't become a reserve officer until after you graduate. So they were testing this out to see how it would go. And so what I had to do was I had to go to basic training and I was a combat engineer, 12 Bravo, the summer before I went to college. And so that immediately doing that, when I went into ROTC, instead of being a military science one, which most freshmen are, I ended up being, well, all freshmen are, I ended up being a military science three, which is the junior year. So I actually got commissioned at 20 years old at the end of my sophomore year. I graduated with a military science associate degree at the end and basically finished that at the end of my sophomore year. So then I became I was a combat engineer up until the time I got commissioned, and then when I got commissioned, I did my officer basic course at Fort McClelland in Alabama as a military police officer.
How long did you serve there?
So I did my full term, which was the 6 year period total, and I actually got fully discharged because you can go into what they call an individual ready reserve. So you're not serving in a unit, but you may be still be eligible for drafting or reinstating. And so I finished completely and got my honorable discharge. I don't know, it was like months, literally months before the initial Iraqi war. And I guess fortunate for me is that because I was military police, they called up every military police in the country to go to Iraq. Because as you may recall, one of the things that military police is in charge of are the POWs, right? Prisoner of war camps. And so what was happening in Iraq? They were all surrendering, right? So they had this enormous amount of POWs, and somebody's got to, protect them, take care of them, make sure they, stay POWs. And so that's the military police. So I guess I was very fortunate I didn't get called up and have to go to Iraq because they didn't have the ability to reinstate me because I just, I don't know, 6 months maybe, had just received my complete discharge from the military.
I tell you what, I'd give a little perspective on our age difference here. I just barely escaped going to Vietnam. My draft number was low. I'd already taken my physical. I was getting ready to get packed, and who knew when I was going to get picked? And Nixon stopped the whole thing. So while I would rather eat my arm off than say I'm a fan of Richard Nixon's, I got to tell you, I'm a fan of Richard Nixon's.
The one thing he did right.
Saved my life. So, so let's kind of fast forward a little bit. I also noticed in your bio, which we'll bring up here on that third slide, was that you worked at Pepper Tree.
Yeah, are you familiar with Pepper Tree Resorts?
Yeah, it was Don Clayton. He was there, right?
Yes, Don Clayton was a longtime employee for Pepper Tree Resorts. And in fact, mentioning Don Clayton, he and Butch Patrick ended up creating their own company called Festiva
Right.
Resorts, where I would say the majority, large majority of those resorts were actually Pepper Tree Resorts. So it sort of was always an interesting watching the evolution of how that worked out to where it did a full circle where, there was Pepper Tree got bought by a company called Equivest, which was, operated and controlled by Richard Breeden. I don't know if you remember Richard Breeden, but he used to
Yep.
be he was like at one point in time the SEC commissioner, right? So he buys Pepper Tree, they get into Equivest, and then it does a full circle where eventually Don and Butch end up buying all those properties back, which becomes the majority of the holdings for Festiva Resorts. So, but yeah, I started working for Pepper Tree Resorts in 1988. At that time, I held a position called a unit manager, which was a very unique and position, and involved a lot of different areas of the company. So as a unit leader, I had specific resorts assigned to me, and I would handle, and I was the liaison from the home office to the resort, which means if the resort needed anything, they contacted me. I also approved all the new business, all the new sales that came in from those particular resorts to the home office. I had to make sure that they were, all the terms were correct, the purchase prices, and if there were exceptions, I had to go sure and go to executives to get approvals. So I was the one that approved all the new business per se. And then in addition to that, I also had to do the 5 to 30-day collections. And on anyone that became delinquent, I would make sure to handle those accounts before they actually got transferred over to the credit and collection department. I also was the customer service department for all the consumers that were actually located at that property. So them getting a call from me was sort of, we had a relationship to some degree, so it was a lot easier for me to make those calls than it may have been for a stranger. But it was a lot. It was a lot of different responsibilities, and I think
That
that
plus,
yeah,
and I would assume at that time too, you're probably in the regular crosshairs of the homeowners associations.
So, back then, this was like 1988, the associations were pretty much 100% controlled by the developer.
Uh,
Um, so the HOAs weren't the issue. It was the developer, but the consumers were first and foremost my concern, right? A, making sure that they were taken care of, and B, preventing them from any justifications for becoming delinquent, and then C, obviously, if they became delinquent, making sure to handle that as well.
so
Um,
that then brought you squarely into the call center, the contact center space.
Absolutely. So I was very, very successful in that aspect of the business. And so Pepper Tree made a decision that they wanted to get into third party business because, and it was a simple reason, they were outsourcing to third parties, and these third party collection agencies had no idea what their business model was. They didn't know how to treat their consumers. They didn't understand that a delinquent owner today is a consumer in good standing tomorrow, and Peppertree was very aggressive in referrals. And so they relied on their consumer base to give them new leads. And so if there was anything that was done to alienate that relationship, then obviously that referral business would drop. So they made a decision that they wanted to get into business with the mission of, yeah, we're going to collect debt, but we're going to do it with the objection of treating the consumers as consumers, knowing that that the relationship isn't going to end, that they're going to continue to be an owner today, a delinquent owner, but tomorrow an owner in good standing. And if we can make sure that that bridge between those two is done in the right kind of way, in the right ethical way, then potentially they can save the deal and get referrals going forward. So that's sort of that was the mission statement of why they created Meridian Financial Services. That happened in February of 1989. As soon as it started, they asked me to be one of the initial employees. I was 23 years old. I said, why not? My intent was to eventually go to law school anyway. I was trying to save up enough money to go to law school. I said, yeah, it sounds good to me. Whatever you guys need me to do. I took the job, and it's, the rest is history, I guess, as they say.
Well, the rest is not just history. That some of it deserves to be told because I know Marriott Marriott ended up picking up a big piece of, if not all, of Meridian Financial Services until what, last year when you bought Meridian?
So,
So you now own Meridian.
yeah, I can give you a little bit of the history there because that was there was a long process to that. So, John McFarland, who was the vice president of Peppertree, was asked by Wayne Kinzer, the owner of Peppertree, to go and start this Meridian Financial Services. And then John asked me to be one of the initial employees. That was in February 1989. So we started the company. I obviously moved up through the ranks very quickly and became a vice president in 1995. At that point in time, Wayne Kinzer was having some health issues. He had made a decision. He wanted to eventually get to the point where he could sell Peppertree Resorts. So he asked John McFarland to come back to Peppertree to be the chief operating officer. And at that time, he had asked Butch Patrick, who was the auditor for Peppertree and had his own accounting firm called Painter and Patrick, to come over to leave his firm and to come over to Peppertree as the CFO, the chief financial officer, with the intent of eventually selling Peppertree, build up the company and let's sell it. So when that happened, I got promoted to president of the company. So I got promoted to president late 1996, early 1997. And I was the president, and still am the president. So Peppertree got sold again to Equivest like in 2001, give or take. But before that, Peppertree had made a decision. Interval International came along. They were looking to expand the services that they provided to their existing clients. They wanted to sort of be a soups to nuts kind of company. And so they had recently bought a servicing company, a servicing and billing company. And they had bought, where they had done supplies and a variety of different products. They bought a software company. So there was a lot of things that they were doing so that when their clients came in, they could offer everything except financing to that particular client. So they needed a collection agency. So they ended up buying Meridian Financial Services in July of 1999. And so we stayed with Interval one way or another, ILG, et cetera. And then Marriott purchased ILG in 2018. So I had been reporting to Marriott since 2018. Ever since that acquisition, I had made conversations about buying the company. They would listen, but we could never. It was just hard to evaluate our company. And so eventually, I made them an offer, and they accepted it, and we closed. And I bought 100% of Meridian Financial Services on July 1st of 2024.
And then recently you also acquired Aspen.
So, we took off. I was able to do things that I normally would not have been able to do under Marriott for obvious reasons, or publicly traded company. Anything that is done is a 2-year vesting kind of program. I mean, they just don't do anything quickly.
You got your own EBITDA.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, and I understand completely. And by the way, Marriott was great to me. They're a great company, and they always treated me extremely well. And once we got the deal closed, they were very supportive to make that happen. So I only have good things to say about Marriott. But for the longevity of Meridian, which has been my baby since 1989, I felt like it was best for us to move on our own. And doing that gave me the opportunity within less than a year to be able to look at acquiring another company within the industry. And so we ended up buying Aspen National, and that closed on July 1st of 2025. So
I watch David quite a bit on Facebook. If you want to know where David is fishing these days, just get on Facebook. He'll tell you.
And he's definitely fishing somewhere.
Garrett, and I think right now he's fishing someplace exotic like South America or wherever. Yeah. So I know he's happy, and you're happy. That's cool.
Yeah. As soon as the deal went, I think he was in Costa Rica fishing. So
I think that's right. Yeah. And his wife was with him. I guess it's their anniversary. So, well, I hope that's not the last we see of him, because he's a swell guy, and so are you. I mean, you and I belong to an industry where there are really only two types of people: the good guys and the not so good guys. And we know who they are. You and I have been around this industry long enough to know what our personal preferences are, but also what the industry perceptions are of different people. And so, I'm very careful, and I know you're very careful about who we're going to be seen with, who we're going to have dinner with, who we're going to hang with. The dynamics of the timeshare industry, particularly, which is the one niche that we both serve. We're in other industries, as I know you are too, but in this timeshare thing, it's so dynamic. The some of the companies that 3 or 4 years ago may not have even existed, or if they existed in a very small way, are now the major players in the industry. There's so much growth going on inside the industry with acquisitions, mergers, uh, companies like Capital, Vistana, uh, Tobe, Joe Takis, and those guys picking up those resorts and turning them around and either selling them off or managing them. And some of those guys, like right now, they've got 150, 200 resorts under management, just like overnight, is what I'm seeing. And meanwhile,
Yeah.
then you've got the brands that seem to be taking, as you said, it takes them 2 years to change their necktie. And they're slowly growing, but not like some of these other guys.
No, but on the other hand, when they do an acquisition, it's a major deal, right? So going back to our earlier conversation about losing business to acquisitions from a shrinking industry, I would say that a large portion of that business that I have lost has ended up in eventually into some publicly traded company's name. So whether it be Diamond, or whether it be Go Key, or I can name others, but there's just eventually they end up with these brands. Now, one of the exceptions to that, or I guess the exceptions to that, are Capital and Vacatia, right? And Capital's acquisition of VRI from Marriott, that was part of the ILG, so Capital bought that from Marriott. They that extended or expanded their portfolio by like 120 plus resorts overnight. And then you have Vacatia, who goes out and makes a huge acquisition, not only in the management side, but also in the developer side by acquiring Daily Management. So those are to me, those are the two major acquisition players outside of the brands.
And Joe Takis is doing it quietly. He'll pick up a resort in Montana, and
Yep.
but he's Joe.
Yeah. So I do a lot of work. I do work for Joe, great guy. And yes, he is, he's a niche guy, and he's going to grow, and Joe's never going to do more than he can handle. So he's going to grow as he wants to grow. And then you got Lemon Juice, right? And Lemon Juice is another company that's been growing uh, with some acquisition, but they have done an incredible job of growing organically. I know they did
Yeah,
take over Cunningham Properties, but
yeah,
organically they've been very successful.
yeah. They continue to go out and pick some of these off one at a time, but they're picking them off quickly,
Yeah.
one at a time. And they've got a good business model, and of course, all of them have some separate high-end funding behind them, because that business model is one. And you mentioned something a minute ago about the shrinking industry. It's interesting that the players might be shrinking, but the buyers, the timeshare owners, is not shrinking. It's growing really. It's growing at a quick pace. And it's interesting how like a buddy of mine once said, VP of sales, a timeshare owner is a timeshare buyer. And when you look at 70% of timeshare owners own more than 1 week, it says a lot about the experience. And the business we're in, we measure that experience. And we don't see red flags. We don't see people going, I wish I could get out of this. I was listening to that guy on the radio this morning coming in, get out of your timeshare now. Every time I hear that guy, I want to reach to the radio and smack him. It just,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's been a big problem for the industry, and it seems like we're we're getting more control of that, and it seems like those types of people are moving away, and so I think we're doing. And again, I give a lot of thanks to ARDA for their
Yep.
help in that. I do see what I call the exit companies. I do see those exit companies definitely shrinking.
Well, ART is working closely with two organizations, one of them, the National Association of Attorneys General, to look at, how to put a microscope to some of those people. And then the other one is an organization called ARELA, which is the real estate regulation group by states. And so every state has a member of ARELA. So between those two organizations, to your point, ARTA is doing a nice job of maintaining a good flow of information back and forth between them. So, hey, can we shift over a little bit to that now, since we're talking a little bit about we're breaching and getting closer and closer to this regulation and what's going on in your industry and my industry. Greg, you and I have always shared an interest in understanding how we are regulated, particularly in the contact center space, with things like the TCPA, do not call, TSR. I don't think that a lot of folks that might be listening to this, assuming there are a lot of folks that will listen to this, I don't believe they understand that if you have a call center, it's highly regulated. I mean, privacy regulations, there are security regulations, and then you start to add the regulations to specific industries like yours, what you can say, how you can say it, to who you can say it, who you can say it for. And I know that we're both active in different association groups. Yours is the collection agency group. You were the president of was it the North Carolina?
The North Carolina Collectors Association, which is a state unit of the American Collectors Association.
And you're on the board still?
I've been on the board for who knows, I don't even know how long now, but I've served in every capacity possible. I've been president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. I try to do whatever I can to help support that particular unit. We've been, we've been very successful over the years. It's a good group of people. We're probably one of the economically best funded units that may be out there. So yeah, it's a good group of people.
Who care?
I'm sorry.
Who care? People who care.
Yes,
I mean, you're
but
as involved in consumer protection as you are involved in business protection. So,
but unfortunately, as in most industries, like we just talked about, there is a shrinking in the size of agencies in the country. So, big players, it's the same as with the timeshare, big players get bigger and mom and pops go away. And so we've definitely seen a shrinkage in the number of agencies across the nation. So that's another thing that they're struggling with, just like artists struggling with.
But the need is not shrinking.
The need is probably bigger than it's ever been. It's just unfortunate that we have less members, which puts, more financial burden on the remaining members, right? Same as with ARDA.
Have you got any burning regulatory legislative issues that you're facing right now?
So, to be honest with you,
I'm talking about the new coming up. What's in your face?
For us, we're pretty sheltered right now because almost all of the bandwidth is being applied toward credit reporting on medical debt. So there's a few issues here and there, in New York City and what they try to do, but then there's lawsuits that it conflicts with state law and back and forth. But the real issue, what the American Collectors Association is really putting most of their weight behind, is the state's willingness to completely eliminate any type of medical debt from being credit reported. So as long as they continue to fight with that, it sort of shelters me, because I'm not in the medical industry at all. So it sort of shelters me at this point in time. My biggest concerns are always trying to follow along with the compliance issues and stay within the regulations of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And then the other, I guess, advantage for right now is that with it being a Republican-controlled Congress, it sort of takes a little bit of pressure off us from the federal perspective. I know the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is, they're sort of more of I guess they're being held back a little bit as compared to how aggressive they were under the Biden administration. But to contrast that, Bob, what that ends up doing is that puts other states in a position like California, New York, Maine, Illinois, etc., to be more aggressive on their state laws, since they don't feel that there's adequate protection at the federal level. Then they'll just create it at the state level, right? So almost creating their own
Particularly the
consumer.
privacy stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, even with consumer protection, right?
Yeah.
So you think about what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was doing, and if those states feel like there's a void there now that it's being controlled by the Republican side, those Democratic states, they'll get more aggressive at forming their own Consumer Financial Protection Bureaus, and so that's always a concern.
Man, I remember when TCPA, first came out, and you may recall, I was really active with a group of people that were responsible for suing the FCC and the FTC over jurisdiction. And we got to the Supreme Court. I mean, we actually got it as far as the Supreme Court to say, and we didn't hit this on the basis of freedom of speech. That's the Supreme Court doesn't pick up flag waving issues. What they'll pick up are issues that have to do with precise laws, rules, regulations, precedents, things like that. Well, we lost that race because of I don't know what, geez, that was so long ago, but I remember it was over do not call. And we thought at that time, and I know you probably did too, that that do not call stuff was going to be the death of the contact center industry. It was just going to kill us all. Well, then what happened at that point though is that the Fed stopped right there.
And Bob, are you there?
Yeah.
Hello.
Did we lose you? Uh-oh. You froze
Bob.
up on me. You froze up on me, Greg.
Yeah, I'm okay. I want to make sure it wasn't on my end. All right, sorry about that.
That's okay. I was saying that with that do not call, the Fed stopped right there, and had they gone one step further and passed that a piece of national legislation, then we wouldn't have suffered through death by paper cut, which is what we're doing today, even at the state level. Now it's privacy, death by paper cut with privacy. We had 17 states with privacy laws on the books today, and another 10 looking at it. California is beefing theirs up. So I'm a member of an organization called the ECAC, Greg. It's the Enterprise Communications Advocacy Coalition, and we are advocates strictly for call centers. And what we're seeing is, at least on the federal level, we believe there's going to be a collision between AI and privacy. And that the privacy legislation that we believe is going to happen next year it will include AI regulations. And it's going to be an interesting battle because, again, if it doesn't happen, it's going to be death by paper cut. Every state will have their own.
I mean, the unfortunate thing is that, technology grows so quickly and legislatively we move so slowly that there's always a constant disconnect, right? As an example, the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act was created in like 1977. And so think about the technology that has happened since then with no legislative changes. And that's what makes this so difficult, right? Like the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, when that first got implemented, what was that, like 91, 92, Bob? Something like that?
Yeah.
We didn't even know unless you were a telemarketer, you didn't even think it was an act that applied to you. And then there were some court cases in the early 2000s that said, no, this applies to pretty much everyone. And so it's like it took them almost a decade to realize, or took everyone almost a decade to realize that this act applied to everyone, not just telemarketing. So that's the problem, is legislatively they just can't keep up with what's going on in technology. And now, to your point with artificial intelligence, that's exactly the point, because when you look at the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, they always refer to artificial and pre-recorded calls, right? And they don't say they say artificial or pre-recorded calls. And there's all types of legislation related to that. Is AI artificial? Is AI pre-recorded? Is AI both? And so how they interpret that is going to be huge on how that applies to the TCPA.
Well, in the ECAC, we have our position on that, and we're getting ready to publish that position because the FCC has just released a period of comment to take a lot of the stuff that's in the TCPA and throw it away because it just isn't germane anymore. Things like of the abandon rate. All right, they're saying the abandon rate doesn't matter, shouldn't count. Well, you can say that if you want to, FCC, but it does matter, it does count, and it is intelligent consumer protection. Ring no answer is another one. That one was prevalent in your industry where, just go right past somebody answering the phone and hit right into their voicemail.
Yep.
Well, there are some of those things where you absolutely have to have because, bad players are going to be bad players.
Yeah, and the bad players don't get affected by legislation. They just continue to be bad players.
Locks keep honest people honest.
Yeah, that's right.
I actually had a cop tell me that one time.
That's right.
Hey, let's, if you don't mind, let's maybe move on and talk about your charity that you introduced me to. I've had a chance to talk to them. They're cool people. I mean,
they really, you have no idea. So, Oscar's Place is, and how I got connected to it. Oscar Roman is the director of fractionals at Living Water Resorts, which is located right on the Georgian Bay. It's a beautiful facility. They're an existing client of mine. I've had a really good relationship with them. Even before they became a client, we had a great relationship with each other. We've been doing business for about a couple of years now. I found out that Oscar, his child had some developmental issues, and so they found out that there was like nothing where they reside that could be a beneficial help to him and the needs that he had. And so they, being the great people that they are, he and his wife Lana went out and created this charity called Oscar's Place, and it's a rehabilitation and wellness center for children. Great people doing a great job, and I try to help them anytime I can.
well, and a couple of interesting points because, as you know, I contribute $50 to whatever your charity of choice is, and because they're Canadian, they can't really accept donations. So what they have done was they've established a foundation, which is basically a scholarship foundation. That any money they collect goes into the foundation, and then they will contribute that money to families in need that have a need for rehabilitation, have a need for wellness. So, and you mentioned too that they've applied for their, what is it in Canada, the equivalent of
It's
T30?
the T3010.
And they've applied for that, so they're on hold.
Yep, it's a long process in Canada, so they're working toward it. Eventually, they'll get to hopefully get approved, and then they can do all the things that are normally, when we can, think about in the United States, a normal 501c3 can do.
I think it's amazing what the heart that some people have. I mean, right now this is being funded by Oscar, and it's something he doesn't have to do. He chooses to do, and you choose to do. We are, at Mobius, we have our charities of choice, like the Crystal House. Lisa was just the president of the board of directors of a group here called Children's Theraplay. They do something very similar to what Oscar's Place does, and I mean, we have this tendency to rely on the government, but the government doesn't pick up all the slack, and we can't continue to rely on the government. That's the one thing you and I will agree on. I'm sure that every time we turn around, the government's sticking its nose into some place where they're not necessarily needed. In this particular case, I'm happy to support Oscar, and I encourage everybody that we know and that might be listening to this to do that. Where'd you say they were located, by the way? Where in Canada are they?
They're on the Georgian Bay.
Which is?
Is it Lake Erin? Let me find out. I'll do a Google search real quick to get the
north, south, east, west.
It's about 2 hours east of, I'm sorry, 2 hours west of Toronto.
Okay. So not far over the border.
No, very close, very close. They're in Collingwood. It's a town called Collingwood, which is in Ontario, Canada.
Cool. Well, I encourage people to, there's a link there
Oh,
for PayPal. So if, you get some time, go give them
yeah,
$50,
and I would suggest they
$10.
go visit Living Water Resorts as well. It's a beautiful place. I just vacationed there this past summer and had a great time. It's an awesome facility, really is. But I like to contribute to charities that I have a emotional connection to, rather than just, And I know that's the same way with you, obviously with Crystal House, right? With your wife Lisa and all the great work that she did for so many years with that organization, and that you guys have an emotional connection to that charity. And that's what I like to have as well. And I really, enjoy the people, really like the people. And when I found out that, someone that I care for has a need, I want to help that. I want to help that person. I want to help their charity.
Yeah, well, and at the risk of sounding like the woke libtard that I am, I do too. I I always enjoy where any place I can help. I mean, because it can't be all about me.
There
Um,
you go.
it just can't. So
We've been very fortunate in life, and we need to try to help those that haven't been quite as fortunate.
I've been very fortunate. I've been blessed
Yeah.
and continue to be blessed. I mean, people ask me when I'm going to retire, and my question is from what? But I mean, I sell software. I love what I do, and I own the business. And we just turned 26 last week,
Yeah.
um,
Awesome. Congratulations.
November 9th.
Yeah, we're in the best industry in the entire country, if you ask me.
Oh God, the people are just awesome. Greg, I'm very fortunate to have met you, and when we see each other, we smile, we shake hands, and we've had dinner together. We just have managed to sustain through a lot of ups, downs, middles, whatever. And I'm fortunate. I'm blessed that I got friends like you.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of you, I wanted to share and this is just a snippet of my friend Greg Sheperd. This gives you some of the substance of Greg, but it can't possibly give you all the substance of Greg Sheperd. He's got a big heart, and he loves to golf. Greg loves to run, and loves to golf. And if I didn't mention it, he loves to golf. Greg, you go around the world to golf with a friend, won't you? I mean, it doesn't matter.
Listen, if somebody wants, I'll go anywhere, anytime. Anybody's, just let's figure in our schedule and I'll go. I don't remember ever saying no to a golf trip.
Yeah, I get it. Absolutely.
So,
So let's see. We could probably say, we can end this if you've got something else maybe that you'd want to share.
no, I mean, I think we've covered everything. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate you inviting me to participate. And again, to you and Lisa, I love you guys. We've been friends a long time, and I look forward to our continued friendship, and can't wait to see you next.
Well, give me a second here. We'll stop recording and then we'll say goodbye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.